In 2010, Novak Djokovic put in a stunning performance at the US Open in the semi-final against tennis's godly force, Roger Federer. The Serb managed to save 2 match points to beat the Swiss master in a 5-set classic lasting almost 4 hours. Djokovic went on to lose the final against the other half of tennis's most dominant duo, Rafa Nadal. But fans around the world sensed that this could be a turning point in the Serb's career. Djokovic at this point was known as a nearly man. He had managed to win the Australian Open 2 years earlier, but his career up until that night at Flushing Meadows was best described as frustrating and wasteful. He had a knack of crumbling during the most pressurised moments of matches and was accused of faking injuries when it looked like he'd have to play 5 sets. But this victory against Federer seemed different. He was fearless and locked in despite the crowd's overwhelming support for his opponent. This performance fundamentally changed Djokovic. And a few months later, at the start of 2011, Djokovic then went on one of tennis's greatest runs, winning 7 tournaments in a row, finishing the season with a 17-6 record, and scooping up 3 Grand Slam titles. So what changed? How did Djokovic go from being unfulfilled potential to breaking through the Federer rivalry that had dominated tennis for over half a decade? Well, it's already been well reported that changing diet played a significant role after Djokovic learned he had a gluten intolerance. But staying off the bread and pasta is not enough to change someone's ability to start thriving under pressure after years of crumbling under it. What Djokovic also changed was his approach to his psychology. In that 2011 season, and now over a decade later, Djokovic has become one of the most psychologically strong athletes of all time. So let's explore exactly what Novak Djokovic did to become so mentally resilient. Djokovic has admitted that in the early stages of his career, he let high pressure moments get to him more than he should have. If a match in the latter stages of tournaments was particularly close, he would begin to play much safer and not show the level of aggression and calculated risk-taking that often allowed him to dominate entire sets. Mid-match collapses seemed almost inevitable. He would lose energy in his focus, often giving his opponents an easy opportunity to sweep him aside. But in 2010, Novak Djokovic first started practicing mindfulness. And the thing with mindfulness is it's often misunderstood. A lot of people still see it as hippie woo-woo stuff, and don't get me wrong, there are a lot of, shall we say, peculiar people that practice it in that way. But it's actually a very practical and accessible tool for anyone wanting to reach high performance, as long as it's used in the right way. The most simple definition of mindfulness is that it's all about practicing bringing your mind and thoughts to the present moment, without any judgment or evaluation. And the way it's most frequently practiced is through meditation and breathing exercises. For Djokovic, he's openly stated, "I do it every day for about 15 minutes, and it's just as important to me as physical training. Instead of trying to silence your mind or find inner peace, you allow and accept your thoughts as they come. They do just bounce around like crazy, but they're supposed to. Your job is just to let them come and go." You see, when it comes to tennis, there's actually a lot of time to think. That's because of the hundreds of stoppages that occur during a match in between points. After a point has ended, the next one typically won't start for around 20 seconds. And this may not seem like a lot of time, but time can easily slow down during the heat of an important performance. Every second that ticks away can feel like 5. And there's also all the time that adds up for breaks in between games and sets. All of that amasses to a lot of minutes, sometimes over an hour a match, where it's just you stood on one side of the court on your own in silence with nothing but your thoughts racing through your head. And what Djokovic realised prior to practicing mindfulness was that his mind would just race way too much. He'd think about the future, of what if I miss this next point, game or serve? Or he'd think about the past, of things that had already happened but you couldn't change, like I should have been able to make that return. But what mindfulness does is allow you to just stay in the present moment, which is the most important place you need to be when performing. If you can't be in the present moment, then you can't enter that flow state, which is so important to reaching peak performance. Djokovic realised that his mind, just like anyone else's, randomly chucks up all kinds of thoughts. And what can actually sometimes be worse for you is trying to control them, or even simply just paying too much attention to them. Mindfulness is just about letting those thoughts come and go. Taking a few deep breaths and just concentrating on your breathing allows other thoughts to just melt away and not distract you or cause you to become stressed or worried. For Djokovic, what mindfulness has led to is not necessarily gaining anything, but rather losing stuff that can potentially be harmful. He said that through mindfulness, I lose fear, I lose anxiety, I lose stress. I guess at the end of the day, that's what you're looking for. But despite losing these things, Djokovic realised that his new approach to the mental side of the game could sometimes be counterproductive. Because if you're too calm, then you can become complacent, because you're missing that competitive energy that comes from being a little bit worked up and stimulated. So over the past decade, Djokovic has made an effort to refine his mental strategies so that he can go out onto the court calm and composed, but also with the right drive and motivation to play with intensity. And the main other tool that allows Djokovic to do this is visualization. Djokovic has said many times that he plays each match in his mind before he goes out on the court. He imagines powerful serves, explosive forehands, and delicately perfect backhand slices. This allows him to imagine himself as a winner, and preemptively feel that buzz of being super confident and energized, which are feelings we all feel when we win. Visualization itself has numerous benefits, ranging from increasing confidence to improving actual form of sporting movements. But for Djokovic, what you could argue is that the combination of his mindfulness and visualization create the perfect blend of mental and physical energy to reach peak performance. When understanding performance, what tends to be the case is that you want an optimal level of arousal. This is the basis of the Yerkes-Dodson law, which shows how performance follows an inverted U. Because if you're under-aroused, you can become bored, unfocused, and complacent. Whereas if you're over-aroused, you can become frustrated, angry, and just generally out of control. But there is this sweet spot where you want to be perfectly aroused. Djokovic's mindfulness helps bring his arousal down a notch or two, and his visualization can help bring it back up, so that he's able to stay floating around that sweet spot. That's why so often he seems calm and composed, but at the same time aggressive and dominant. It's this approach that arguably came most in handy in 2019, when Djokovic faced off once more against Roger Federer, this time at Wimbledon, in a final that lasted almost 5 hours. Federer was as ever the crowd favourite, with chants of his name filling centre court throughout the entire match. But Djokovic managed to stop the Swiss from taking 2 match points at 8-7 during the 5th set. With exhaustion taking over his body, Djokovic showed mental resilience to fight back from what seemed like an inevitability. It was meant to be Federer's last great triumph at the Grand Slam where he was the favourite child. Djokovic revealed that when the fans were chanting Roger's name, he would simply imagine them chanting Novak instead, something his younger self would never have allowed. And he was only able to do this because he had visualised success in this match so much, and had ensured he stuck to his simple but effective mindfulness techniques during perhaps the most pressurised match of his entire career. Djokovic would go on to win the tiebreak to win the final set 13-12 and win his 5th Wimbledon title. It was one of the longest matches of his career, which showed how far he had come given a decade earlier he could barely last 3 hours, let alone 5 out on the court. Yes, of course, his physical condition had improved, but at that point any athlete is completely exhausted, and the only thing that keeps them performing at such a high level is their mental resilience. And it is this repeated demonstration of mental resilience during high-pressure moments that has allowed Novak Djokovic to become the most dominant force in tennis over the past 10 years.